So good evening. This is Ka-Sing again, Ka-Sing from the University of Hong Kong, one of the co-curators of the Venice Biennale 2021 Hong Kong collateral events. So tonight we have the fourth webinar titled Tourists, Expatriates and Immigrants. And tonight, we are very happy to have invited three important guests located in different parts of the world to join this webinar. So first, I would like to introduce Fergus. Fergus, hello, Fergus.
Hello, thank you for the kind invitation to be here.
Yeah, Fergus is now in Canada, right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and we have Vicky Chen,
Hi.
who is now in Macau. Hi, Vicky, and we have Tris as well. She's in Hong Kong with us. Yeah, yeah. So, Fergus, would you please briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Ka-Sing. So my name is Fergus Maclaren. As he mentioned, I'm in Canada right now. So greetings from very snowy Ottawa, which is just, of course, the capital city in the center of the country. I've been a tourism planner for about the past 25 years. Much of my earlier work had been in Asia, and I've done work in Malaysia, Vietnam. I've gone to school in Thailand at AIT. Since that time, I've done more focus in terms of Canada and now Africa in terms of the work that I do in terms of destination planning and management. And I'm also focused on World Heritage Sites and the work of the International Council on Monuments and Sites, where I'm the president of the International Cultural Tourism Committee.
Yeah, for people who are familiar with conservation of built heritage and historical sites, then you may know the term ICOMOS. Yeah, ICOMOS standing for International Council on Monuments and Sites. And so Fergus, as what he has discussed, he's the president of the International Cultural Tourism Committee now. Yeah. So Vicky, how about you? Would you please briefly introduce yourself, although many of us know you?
Yes. Good evening in Macau time. For me, I have most of my educational background in Hong Kong and Macau. And for those who know me, I'm a graduate from ACP. And after that, I worked as a program coordinator in ACP for almost 2 years. And then I pursued my PhD study in Hong Kong Polytechnic University. And after that, I'm now working in Macau as a lecturer in Macao Institute for Tourism Studies.
Yeah, Vicky mentioned about ACP. ACP is the Architectural Conservation Programs of the Faculty of Architecture in Hong Kong U. Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Vicky. Yeah, and so definitely we were colleagues. Yeah, for some time. And Tris, you were also a colleague of mine in the past.
Yes.
Yeah, Tris.
Yeah.
How about you? Please briefly introduce yourself to many of us. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Tris. I am an architect and a authorized person in Hong Kong. I teach full-time. So I used to teach at Hong Kong U. Now I teach it in a self-funded tertiary institution called BI in product design. I completed my PhD in the real estate and construction department at Hong Kong U. So my PhD topic was also on conservation, on heritage conservation. Looking at the impact, of conservation. So I'm a big fan of Venice Biennale. I have been an exhibitor in 2012 in Venice. And so it's great to be back in the Venice Biennale team. And this is my second webinar on the Biennale this week. I was just with Roger and Donald earlier this week when they had their webinar. But I've been following Ka-Sing's webinars too. So, and also Paul Mui's last time when Winnie Ho was one of the speakers. So you guys are doing a fantastic job despite all the pandemic and everything. So great job, guys.
Thanks, Tris. Yeah, for our audience tonight, we're not going to have a very long discussion on Tris and her teammates exhibit. But if you have the time, please visit our online exhibition soon, where you can see all the exhibits, including Tris team's exhibit, which has something quite phenomenal, some concrete biscuits that I've never seen before. Okay, so back to the discussion tonight on tourism, tourists, expatriate, and immigrants. I would hope that Fergus, would you please share with us your understanding of tourists first, and then we'll followed by Vicky and also by Tris project on immigrants. Okay, so Fergus, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Ka-Sing. tourism, in many ways, tourism sort of stretches back about 220 years, but the modern eras of tourism, as you know it, really stretches back to the 1950s and the 1960s, when you started to see the opening up after World War II of air routes. People had more money to spend, and there's a real interest in terms of being able to see the world and the different places around it, these great sort of destinations that had been seen as, these really important places that you could, have a cultural experience or a natural experience. And certainly, thanks to things like movies, magazines like National Geographic and other publications in the Western world, you start to see a lot of Europeans traveling, experiencing Asia, Africa, and of course, Europe. And of course, as the economics evolved and as over time, especially in the 70s and 80s, you start to see more Asian travelers and more Latin American travelers as well, because the economic opportunities were there. And also the viable elements related to, trying to see different sort of opportunities in the world were also sort of key amongst them. And, as Kasinga talked about cultural heritage, you started seeing these places of cultural heritage significance pop up as.
We're having a technical issue here. Yeah.
Is a really big drive.
You might want to let Fergus know.
Yeah.
Things away.
Fergus, it might be easier for you if you switch off your video, Fergus.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe
Yes,
easier for you to switch off the video, then the transmission might be better. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fergus,
Fergus,
for a while. Yeah.
yeah, please continue. You were talking about the availability of
cultural heritage
opportunities, for people to travel.
Yeah. And so, at the time in 1972, you had the World Heritage Convention being signed in Europe. The big problem that came from that was they became victims of popularity, if you will, where many of these sites had imagined this opportunity of celebrating their uniqueness and their place in the world. At the same time, it became readily apparent with more people traveling and greater interest in seeing these wonderful places that, more flights began arriving in those destinations. And you also had the creation of what was called a visitor economy. And the idea of the visitor economy is that you have hotels, you have ports, you have facilities, services, amenities, all these different things where these places suddenly became very dependent on a shifted form of economy. And so as a result, as attractions, particularly at the World Heritage Site level, you start to see an overwhelming of these places like Venice. Of course, the Biennale is certainly a good example of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or Dubrovnik or Barcelona or the Great Wall or other places. So to that end, where it started off as a way to bring people to a place and to really, of course, with COVID, you're seeing like in Africa, tourism is down 98%. Other places it's down 60% over the past 6 months, according to recent WTO sort of report. So to that end, tourism, as I said, it's around and the amount. Has formed since the 1950s. How's that?
Yeah, we do have a technical issue here, probably because of the number of participants being pretty large, so it's difficult for Fergus' side in Canada to transmit his data to us. Yep. So maybe before Fergus finish his discussion on tourism, how about we come to Vicky's presentation first, which is on expatriation as well as tourism. Yeah. So Vicky, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Kasing, for introduction.
Yep. So Vicky,
Yep.
can you share your PowerPoint with us?
Yes, I'm trying to share that. Yes, I got it. Thanks for your patience.
Yep. Yeah, we are seeing it. Yep. Then you may start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Yes. So good evening, audience. Is happy to be invited to share some of my insights to the topic. So today I will talk about the expatriation and tourism. So first, in terms of the tourism studies, there is no really a distinct difference between the expatriation and immigrations. And for tourism, actually it is considered as a form of a temporal international migrations, because you may travel to the other place. And if you have ever considered about immigrations to their different destinations, and tourism is considered as a pre-immigration facilitators. And there are many factors that will affect you to make a final decision whether you will immigrate to the place or not. So such as the destination image. So destination image is the summary of your personal belief, ideas, and your perceptions of the place where you go to. And there are also some other reasons like the social relationships, ties, and connections, which will also affect you to make such decisions. And as I said, your personal perceptions to the place is also affected. And probably we need to first know what an expatriate is. So simply saying, in general, it can be considered as a person who temporarily or permanently living in another country or other than their native country. And there is a kind of saying about the difference between the expatriate and immigrated, is that for the immigrants, they are considered who move to another place for permanent residence there. But for the expatriate, they come to the place, but they have not made the decision whether to live there permanently or temporarily. So it really depends on the different factors, like how we define the length of stay or even the social status of a person. And there is a kind of saying, using the example of Hong Kong, for the Filipinos, they may not be considered as expatriates in most of the people's perspective, but in the Hong Kong's government, they will officially use immigrants to describe those peoples who are not get the permanent residence in Hong Kong. And even for the mainland Chinese, they may consider as the expatriates, but for themselves probably is not the case. So you will see that how this definition is different, perceived by the different people. And the second definition, as you will see, that is introduce this expression from the business perspectives. So it is said it's the legally working individual who comes to the place by trying to pursue a career-related goals, such as being assigned by the organizations to work to a destination just for a limited durations. And for expatriates, they're quite different and quite diverse and varied by the different status or the life stage or even the different cultures. So such as students can be considered as expatriates as they come to a place but only stay there for a few years and just temporarily living in the place, and they're also considered expatriates. Or they can be the retirees who make their decision to reside in a place and live there for long, and this can be considered expatriates too. Even for the person who just comes to the place for the reasons like work, and when they first come to the place, they may consider it as tourists because they want to have some novelty seeking and to get adapt to the environment. So that's why when they first come to the place, they're mostly work as a tourist. And for the expatriates, tourists can be part of it. And in tourism studies, when people talk about the expatriates, mostly they will consider the tourist motivations to the destinations. So we know that visiting families and relatives is main motivations or the reasons why you come to destinations. So that's why for the expatriates, they may consider first for themselves when they first come to a different place. They may work as a tourist because they don't know their place. So that's why they will explore it first. And when they get familiar with the environment, they could be considered as a host. When their families and friends come to visit them, they have their sense of obligations to bring them around and even work as a guide or even the experts to have their site interpretations to their friends. So in terms of their families and friends, they also have some expectations for these hosts, so-called the expatriates, such as the trip lengths and even the expectations of their hospitalities. And so there are studies in tourism research and saying about the different pressures and impacts on the expatriates on their capabilities to serving as a guests and hosts to their families and friends. And for the families and friends, you may imagine if they come to visit you for the first time, definitely they will explore as a tourist to take a vacation to explore the different tourism sites. And if they come to visit you for so many times, so definitely they will not work as a tourist, but start just as a family visit. So definitely for this kind of different situations, we know that there is a blurred relationship between the tourists and expatriates. And even for your families and friends, they may come, but is quite familiar with the environment already. So this is something that makes the home away from home. And now I will introduce to you another examples which used to describe the life of the Hong Kong expatriates. As you may notice that this is a networking mainly for the mainland Chinese who are working or studying in Hong Kong. And this platform will have a social networking for all these expatriates who are working or living in Hong Kong. And it offers quite a lot of different service to the people. So such as their job opportunities and even can offer some tourism related information such as the different dinings and where to go and where to have fun. And in terms of the other things like the accommodation service, it also offers these kind of platforms. And most importantly, this one is really a good social networking platform for the Hong Kong expatriates. And lastly, I will finish my presentation with my personal experience. For me, I have both study and working experience in Macau and Hong Kong. And when I first studied in Macau, I was working as a kind of tourist when I first visit there. And when I get familiar with the place, I can be considered more as an expatriate. And later I goes to Hong Kong, and these patterns start again. I'm back to the student again, and then being as a worker. And now I'm reside in Macau again. So you will see that how the different identity is changed from students, workers, and for me, Hong Kong and Macau both are the second home. So that's all of my sharing for the first part.
Yeah, thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Vicky. So, Fergus, are you back with us, Fergus?
Yes, I am back here.
Oh, great, excellent, Fergus. We haven't heard you finishing your talk on tourism. Would you like to continue now?
Just briefly. I mean, as I think I was mentioning before, in the field, we've been experiencing over tourism, and certainly, within the tourism field itself, there are a lot of dimensions. I mean, it's just as Vicky was just discussing in terms of her very good presentation. It's tourism can come in different forms, whether it's related to nature, adventure, and in this case, culture as well, where there are big draws to go and see various places and perhaps, even move there eventually. So, within the past 7 months, that has changed because of the fact that we are dealing with obviously severe constraints on travel and traveler confidence, where the opportunities might be there, and there might be people who would be interested in traveling, visiting friends and family, or even moving from place to place. But the reality is that, the restrictions that are there, the travel confidence, various other factors are just, telling people right now, all these, destinations that have built up these visitor economies that I mentioned earlier, whether it was a Taj, whether it was, other Angkor Wat or other sort of interesting places in Asia, if you want to use regional examples. The reality is that there's a real focus now to say, okay, we've created these sort of huge systems in place to attract people, whether for the short term or the long term, if they're immigrants or if they're expats, or, they have various systems in place to serve as destinations. But moving forward, can we still work with the same mass tourism model? Is the way that we've created and developed these places appropriate? And especially when it comes to cultural heritage, does it make sense for the types of demands we're putting on these places that were built 5, 6, 7, 8 centuries ago, and were only built for a certain volume of people? And now we're introducing cars, we're introducing high rises, we're introducing these thousands of people. So again, there's a lot of issues moving forward from COVID, where we really have to rethink what doesn't make sense in terms of how we create, manage, and continue to develop these unique and interesting destinations. So I think that's a good sort of start ending, I think, from my point right now.
Yeah, thank you, Fergus. We'll get back to the sustainability issue in the later part of today's discussion. So now, Tris, are you ready to talk about immigrants? Yeah. Although it may not be that suitable to simply fit your presentation under the immigrants title, but it does relate to that, right?
Yes, and I think it's such a nice work that you did, synchronizing the 3 speakers. We had on expat and then tourism. It was like done on purpose. So, so let me share my screen. Hopefully, you're looking at the PowerPoint right now.
Yeah, we are seeing this.
Okay, good. So I don't know how to get rid of the side thing, but you're looking at it, all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm an architect, and I'm really interested in community projects, for those of you who know me. So the title of my presentation is called Architecture for New Immigrants in the New Normal. As you understand that with COVID-19, a lot of people are stuck at home. They have to work from home. Students have to study from home. It's a kind of new way of getting used to a kind of work operation, which is unprecedented previously. So what I had done recently, it's a community project working with some of the recent immigrants in Hong Kong, mainly from the mainland, and co-designing furniture for the homes for those who live in subdivided units. For those of you who know, Hong Kong is a very high density urban context. And a lot of people who cannot afford private housing and are not right in the queue of public housing, they have to find their means, and some of them have to live in very, very substandard conditions. We call the subdivided units. So this is a community project which turned into an empirical study as well. So I'm just going to quickly go through. I'm going to talk about some of the background, some of the objectives, the methodology that I had used, the data that we have collected. We've got some analysis as well as the research findings. For those of you who understand that Hong Kong recent immigrants, a lot of them are from the mainland, but there are also a number of them from the Philippines, from Nepal, from the Southeast Asia area. And the kind of wealth disparity between the Hong Kong citizens and some of the mainland immigrants are really wide. You know, out of the population that we have in here, we do see that a lot of them are kind of in the below average kind of income range. And you can see that some of the data that we had found, for example, their mean income, some of the rent they're paying for this subdivided units, and the average household size of them. And some of them are kind of living with people who are under 15 in terms of age. And so students or children who have to live in a kind of conditions like that, we find that is quite problematic. And you can see in one of the conditions in here, you know, for example, they do have a very, very small study area. They don't even have their own living room or bedrooms or, you know, separation of spaces so that they can properly study. So everything was jammed together. So imagine if you have to go on Zoom, you know, with the school when your, you know, mom might be doing dishes and your brother is doing something else and your dad is also at home. It kind of creates a very, very challenging environment. So what we did was we piggybacked with a charity group, Caritas. They're an NGO, a community group in Hong Kong, and we did about 10 houses for people who are underprivileged, people who have children, and people who are willing to take on having us as designers to come into their homes to do co-design with them, to really understand their needs. And some of these immigrants are, you know, voicing some of the opinions that, for example, they would like to kind of empower. They wanted to be empowered so that their children under the age of 15 would feel much better, more motivated in terms of learning performances. So this study really focused on 3 key areas. One, it's about empowerment. How do we empower youth and their families who are newly immigrants to Hong Kong to really kind of adapt to the environment in Hong Kong? Secondly, to motivate them so that they've got better learning motivation, they get better academic performances. And thirdly, minimize the alienation, because a lot of them had voiced out that since coming to Hong Kong, they feel like they are being isolated. They don't feel like they are in the mainstream of the community. So these are the 3 areas that we really wanted to kind of tap into to really study. So the research team, which comprised of myself and my staff and my students at BI, we went into these families and we acted as facilitators to really understand their needs. So first of all, we kind of, you know, measure their spaces in their houses, and all of them came in all various sizes. And then we kind of understood, you know, the limitations they had. And then we went back to our studio and then we designed bespoke, you know, individually to suit their needs. So some of them wanted, you know, a desk that is flexible. Some of them wanted a foldable table. Some of them wanted to fit, you know, a rice cooker along with school bags, along with other items. So we kind of did a very detailed understanding of what individual families needed. And we eventually co-designed with them. And then we made models and we went back to them and we finally did the furniture in full scale and brought it to their homes. So this project lasted for about 10 months and we physically went there and did all the different 5 stages. So today, what I would like to share, it's more not on the institute installation and the furniture making, but more on the findings of what we found. So mainly on the stage 5. So you can see that the hypothesis that we had was by co-designing with these newly immigrants, we would be able to have a positive impact on psychological empowerment, which I call PE in here. So we would raise awareness of the impact perceived the competence, we would have self-determination, we would kind of increase the kind of perceived control amongst this study group. We would also have positive impact on the learning motivation. So hopefully that once they have their own piece of furniture, they would feel more empowered. They would feel they own a piece of something that they also participated in.
Yeah, so, Tris, I'm very curious to see your slides.
Yes.
Are you not intentionally giving the suspense?
Well, you get to see it. So, but most of the things that I'm showing you right now would be numbers from now on. So it's very,
okay.
Yeah, so I do have a lot of slides, but I didn't put that many slides. So we did survey about 200 people, and both participants and non-participants as well, of the newly immigrants. And then also alienation, we predicted that that will have a negative impact. So these are the findings in terms of the demographic distribution, age distribution, as well as the degree of education. So some background studies. And you can see that this is one of them. This is a newly immigrant, a single mom who has a daughter who is the age of around age 10. And she was really happy. She was in tears when we moved that piece of furniture in her home. And everything was custom designed to suit. So, you know, a teapot would fit in here, her school bags, her homework, and everything else would fit in there. Whoops. So am I sharing the screen? Did I?
Yeah, I've stolen the rights because, Tris, I'm playing the presentation for you.
Okay.
Yeah, so you're talking about the slide on the survey, right? 200 survey.
Yeah. So you can scroll down. Yeah. So these were the background information. So again, the newly immigrants, age, the people who were surveyed in terms of the age, gender, as well as the education background. So you can go to the next slide, and I was talking about the outcome. So you can see that this is the mom who was a single mom, a recent immigrant, and her daughter was also benefiting from this result. And the study had shown that 90% of the participants agree that co-designing had helped them, and 87.8% agree that the overall work and learning efficiency has been improved. So the learning performances had been improved. And 37.8% of the participants tend to spend extra 0.5 hours or more a day in the space, which is what we call recently renovated. It's not really renovation that we did, but it's an upgrade version of the subdivided units that we kind of contributed to them. Mm-hmm. So our analysis showed that, you know, there is positive impact on the PE, the empowerment, as well as the learning motivation. And we're glad to see that there is a negative impact on the alienation. So they felt that they're less isolated as a result. They felt that they're part of the community, and they felt that by engaging them, they feel like they have done something they haven't done before. And I'm going to show you some quotes later on, so you can go to the next slide. Yep. So we feel very happy as well. This is one of the articles in the newspaper. It says students help the subdivided family to custom-made furniture. So these are my students and the representative from Caritas, and they really had a very positive report on the outcome we had. And we focused mainly on newly immigrants as well as families with children. We wanted to really kind of look at the learning attitude. So 2 more slides. Second last slide, you can see that these are the outcomes. So we had an exhibition at our campus. We video them, and then we kind of monitor the usability as well as the satisfactory rate. So sometimes when the furniture has wear and tear, we would go back to their homes and we would repair them, and they feel very happy. And most of them chose a kind of blue for some reason. I don't know if it is a kind of a popular color, but a lot of children chose blue was their favorite color. So it's quite interesting. And if you zoom in, there are 2 quotes from the children. One is age 12 and one is age 15. And they all felt like the experience really gave them a positive kind of impact. And then they felt very, very great. So for example, here it says, the co-design process gave me a different experience in life. Before I was shy at school and I was afraid that my classmates know that I do my homework on my bed. Now I have gained more self-esteem, as I am now feeling equal with my peers and having a decent learning environment for Zoom meetings and for online classes. My performance at school has improved, and I participate more, and I'm proud to show my friends my nice desk that I have as part of their environment that they had. So we're really proud that they had positive sharing with us. So all this was packaged into a piece of article, which I submitted to a peer review journal. So you can go to the last slide. So in a nutshell, I think it's really great that I had this opportunity to really work with the new immigrants in Hong Kong to really understand the difficulties during COVID-19. And therefore, you know, the new normal, even though it's very challenging, it gave us new opportunities as architects, as designers, to really kind of be part of the community, really understand, you know, their difficulties and really kind of have some impact in their lives. So, you know, that's a nutshell in my sharing, and I hope you enjoy the slides.
Thank you very much, Tris. Yeah, I would like to go back to your slide on the stages. Yeah, this is the stages that you mentioned about like formulation of the research agenda, like framing the question and engaging the stakeholders, and then collaborating with the co-design creation with dialogue labs method. So you were talking to them. Yeah, but in two ways, not just one way, and execute of the bespoke furniture in situ and develop and discuss on the end products. Yeah, what seems most important, I mean, equally important to stage 1 and 2 will be stage 5 when they evaluate the performance of the project, right? Yeah, in fact, Fergus, I see this little project on for people living in subdivided flats. In fact, it's actually quite similar. I mean, this flow of thinking is quite similar to the management of a tourism site, of a cultural heritage site, right? What do you think?
I think, thanks, Kissing, and thank you, Tris. That was a very interesting presentation. That's certainly Hong Kong has its own interesting dynamic as an urban space. You know, and I think in terms of one of the big things, especially now in this time of COVID-19, is how you rethink how people use and experience these destinations. And part of the way that we're trying to look at some of these places is how do you manage, or how do you flow people through a site while at the same time giving them an experience of that place. It's you know, it's one thing to have them firsthand be able to walk around and see and explore, but at the same time, especially in a crowded environment, it's more just, you know, you don't have that sense of place, or that sense of experience that you would get now that you're going to some of these destinations where there is so little tourism. And so the challenges, especially in the design aspects of it, is how do you manage to you know, meet people's expectations, create that experience, and create something more meaningful than perhaps some of the tourism we've been experiencing in the past 15, 25 years.
Yeah, thank you. Yep, switching to the second part smoothly of today's tonight's webinars, I would like Vicky to share your second presentation on the conflict between tourism and heritage. Yeah, let me stop share, and you can switch on your presentation. Share your presentation with us now.
Yes.
Yeah, for our participants, if you do have a question for any of us, you are free to send me a chat. Yeah, write down your question in the chat room. I'll keep checking on that. Okay.
So thanks for Trace's impressive sharing on the practical practices. So for me, I will continue to talk about the relationship between heritage and tourism. So probably you may consider, okay, it's a conflict or symbiosis. So by the end of my presentation, hopefully you can get some inspirations. So I will start my presentation with this sentence. I think it can help us to give the kind of ideas on how the relationship between the heritage and tourism. So heritage implies a sense of stability and continuity, whereas tourism is by nature a form of modern development and consumptions. So you will see that heritage is more focused at protecting the historical settings, while tourism probably is more focused on the modern development and is economic driven. So you will see that how they're quite different in natures. So it can somehow to explain why there is a kind of discussion and argument on the conflict relationship between heritage and tourism. So in terms of their relationship, there is a kind of saying there are three different relationships between these two disciplines. So first is a conflict, which tourism is blamed to be a factor of damage on the local environment, or coexistence. So in such way, tourism is considered has no harm to the environment where it is located. And the other relationship is considered symbiosis, which means the heritage values can be enhanced by the tourism. So the question is, which kind of relationship do you think can best describe the tourism and heritage? So hopefully with my sharing later, you may get some clues. So in tourism discipline, ideally, heritage is considered as a tourism resources, but sometimes it is also being said for heritage is considered as a tourism product. So you will see heritage is being considered as a kind of the consumption in the tourism industry. And what tourism focuses how to make the heritage resources to be more attractive and appealing in order to make more profitable purpose. So when you first think about heritage-made tourism, probably you may come up with this kind of situations in mind. It's the crowd issues. So for those who may not know Macau, and here it is the Rules of St. Paul, which is located at the center of the historic city of Macau. And in front of it is a square with so many tourists. So imagine if you are one of it, you may consider that is a highly influence of your tourist experience here, right? And this is the situation before the pandemic. And this is what it looks like currently. So I took these photos in October during weekend. So you can imagine that now it's really empty and only the locals may use the sites. So previously for the government, they have made so many different measures to trying to solve these crowd issues and even to let the peoples go to the different heritage sites by introducing the different heritage trails, but still it cannot solve the issues. Or because of the pandemic, it seems that the problem is solved overnight. But this is just a joke. And the commercializations, this is also another issue. And this is the figures in Lijiang. So you will see that for the different brand business, they are starting to move into their heritage sites for commercial purpose. And this is considered deteriorations of the heritage values of the site. And also there's another issues when we talk quite a lot about authenticity. So for these figures is ethnic minority costumes with their bamboo dance performance. And you will see it is now become a kind of tourist activities and people even enjoy it. And maybe you may consider that it's not authentic, but actually for authentic is not a fixed properties of a condition or a object. Actually is negotiables and is perceived differently by different people. So in such ways, the tourist may not consider that is inauthentic, but it is considered probably is the experiential authenticity. And if you see these figures, that is also the bamboo dance performance. And there are totally more than 11,000 dancers who make this performance at the same time. And this kind of activities is designated in the Guinness World Record. So you will see how these kind of activities are trying to make this intangible heritage becomes worldwidely known by the others. And also gentrifications. So gentrification means the production of the space is gradually occupied by the affluent users. So it caused the result that the original residents will move out of their town. And here is a famous water town in mainland China. So you will see that for the main street, actually more than 6% of the business is owned by the outsiders, and they are catering for the tourist use. But only less than 10% of the restaurants are made for the locals. And even for the locals, they start moving out from this water town. So in fact, this kind of gentrification problem happens in so many tourism sites in mainland China. So when heritage meets with tourism, if there is too much focus on the heritage preservations, that will undermine the economic potential of heritage, in particular in relationship to the tourism. But if we too much explore the heritage values, especially for the economic benefits, for the commercializations issues, that will definitely have some destroy on the heritage values, which will increase the risk of the permanent physical damage of the heritage structures and even the loss of the cultural values and authenticities. So there are also a lot of other concerns. So in terms of the heritage professionals and even the managers, they are trying to argue that can do something to have the kind of balanced relationship between the conservation and tourism development. And now I will introduce to you this sustainable development. Actually, it's not only applies to the tourism industries, almost is now considered the agenda of a lot of industries. So in terms of the definitions, you will know that the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So if you see the definition, you may probably think of, okay, it's something that's quite similar if we're talking about conservations. So for conservations, based on definition by UNESCO, we are also talking about, we will preserve the values for the present generations, but also without compromising the use of the future generations in terms of their enjoyment to the heritage site. So by these two definitions, you will see that for conservations, it's not really a conflict with the development, but it's part of the development. And we know that for the pandemic of COVID-19, there is a serious impact to the tourism industries. And these figures from UNWTO is showing how the international tourism arrivals is being affected by these COVID-19s. And for these COVID-19s, if you see the figures here, and you will see it becomes a kind of most serious damage to the kind of tourism arrivals to the place, even more than the impact of the SARS and the financial crisis. And we don't know how the effect will last. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the tourism recovery measures, there were different kinds of sayings. And a lot of governments start to do something to help to recover the current situations. So in general, which is not only applied to tourism, there are a lot of economic related stimulus packages trying to help to recover such situations, like the different fiscal and monetary measures or some discounts on their utilities expenses for the business in order to have them to sustain for somehow. And in terms of the tourism-specific measures, there are also something that applies to these industries in particular, such as some incentive programs to the airlines, or there are some return or reskilled tourism workers for those unemployed, and they can take these opportunities to enhance their hospitality skills. So that is also the case in Macau. And for the Labor Department, they offer the free training courses for those workers who are unemployed under the pandemic. And at the same time, there is opportunities for the virtual tourism development. Mm-hmm. So a lot of live streaming activities, campaigns is trying to promote the site virtually. And there is also the opportunities for the private companies to trying to demonstrate their kind of CSR, the customer social responsibilities during the pandemic. So for this time, the public-private partnership, this model is being reinforced because of this COVID-19. And a lot of discussions has been concerns on the hygiene problem, and for the government and different organizations, they're trying to enhance the tourist confidence to travel to the place. So that's why a lot of safety protocols to trying to make people feel relief from such pandemic. And in terms of the international tourism, we don't know when it will be restarted, but definitely for the domestic tourism, a lot of scholars trying to argue that domestic tourism will start first and probably will last for long. Mm-hmm. And lastly, I will conclude my presentation with this slide and so many questions regarding the placemaking, because both heritage and tourism are considered as the ways that making the place. So such as who define success, normally who get the most benefits from the different development will consider the success. So in such case, for both heritage and tourism, probably we need to concern that who define the success and whose story is being told through the place making. So definitely we need to let the local community's voice being heard. And who owns the new tourism placemaking landscape? So definitely we need to consider whether locals can also own their own properties. And how do tourists contribute to placemaking? So we know that tourists are users to the different tourism resources, even include the heritage. But actually, tourists can also be a co-creator of this placemaking. Mm-hmm. We know that tourists are bloggers and broadcasters, and they will share their experience online, and they will also trying to spread what kind of cultural values they learn from the site. So they can be part of the placemaking, but how to educate them, how to guide them in a proper way is what we can do. Mm-hmm. And lastly, there are different people who are joining in the progress of placemaking. So it's not only the responsibilities of the government planners, but a lot of people, organizations are engaged in such process. So we need to know how to let them get engaged in such placemaking process. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's all of my sharing. Hope you get some clues on the relationship between heritage and tourism.
Yeah, definitely that we will hope to achieve the conclusion, which is symbiosis. Yeah, instead of simply like taking advantage of one of the other. Yeah, Fergus, as the president for the Cultural Tourism Committee, and in view of the current COVID-19 pandemic, what is the committee have in mind? I mean, what would be the most urgent topic to discuss and plan in advance, plan ahead?
So thanks, Gus-Sing, and thank you, Vicky, for that very good, thorough presentation. You cover a lot of the subject very well. So one of the things just to think about is that I'll give you three specific things that you can incorporate. One is that we have what's called the International Cultural Tourism Charter, and that is in the process of being renewed. And we were renewing it after 20 years. It was last renewal was in 1999 in Mexico. We're in the process now of renewing it. And over that time, we had aspects related to indigenous peoples' cultural heritage, the Sustainable Development Goals, and of course, climate change. And so we were trying to incorporate all these different factors into sites and site management. And now at this point in time, we were in the process of finalizing it. And then in March, our ICOMOS board came back to us and said, look, you really have to look at it now in terms of natural disasters, conflicts, and pandemics in the case of COVID and others, because as you know, we've had SARS, we've had MERS, we've had other H1N1, we've had various pandemics over the past 15, 20 years. And regrettably, this will probably not be the last one. So again, how do you frame tourism and how do you think about tourism with these different circumstances in mind? The other elements to consider are that in the long term, pandemics, this is a situation that we're dealing with right now. But I think the bigger issue that ICOMOS, in fact, at its scientific council committee meetings this week that I was taking part in, is the fact that you have to take a longer term look at climate change. And certainly pandemics are sort of a key issue right now, but you look at places that are either suffering from rising seas or heat extremes or other factors. It really has longer term implications for these cultural heritage destinations that we know and love. But over time, there has to be some way to rethink in terms of what does the long-term viability of tourism means at these kinds of destinations. So in terms of the work of our committee, part of what we're doing now is also taking and increasing the lens on climate change and what that means for tourism and management of these destinations.
Understood. Yeah, definitely. We should not just think about the current condition, but really need to plan for the future. So a question for all of our guests tonight. Yeah, do you see COVID-19 as an opportunity or a challenge for the protection of cultural heritage sites, or as opportunity to improve future tourism? What do you think? Maybe, yeah, Fergus, go first.
Sure. In some ways, I see it as an opportunity, and I also just quickly wanted to throw in there that in terms of immigration, and we talked about this before, this is where you're starting to see people potentially, immigrate for a number of reasons. And one of the things that has come up as an opportunity within COVID-19 is this idea of digital nomads. This is an expression that's being used now in the field, and because of things like the internet, and you can basically connect from your phone or your laptop anywhere around the world, you're getting a number of places that are starting to attract people that wouldn't otherwise travel there. And so for not these mainstream cultural heritage destinations, or these destinations that have really unique intangible cultural heritage, we also have to factor in that as well. Because music, arts, food, dance, etc.
Yeah,
this is a way to support that in smaller destinations by bringing people there who might not otherwise stay there for periods of time where they can work, contribute to the local economy, but also support these different forms of cultural heritage. And the other immigration point is that with the election 2 days ago in the United States, our immigration online services always blow up, because everyone after a US election these days wants to move to Canada for one reason or another. So that's another form of tourism that is unexpected, but that occurs. But so just to quickly say that there are reasons why people will migrate, that they will experience tourism. And the long-term question is that from a COVID standpoint, as I was mentioning earlier on, how do we flow people through a site better? How do we support the local economies? And how do we sustain, things like the intangible cultural heritage that might be there? Because it's really critical, moving forward.
Yeah, for participants who are not aware or understand the term of intangible cultural heritage, basically it's also about culture, but it is not so much embedded physically in buildings, but more on the activities and the rituals, like the dance, the music, even cuisine. And some of our students are actually working on thesis whether the COVID-19 has actually impairing the existence of intangible cultural heritage. Yeah. So, Tris and Vicky, on my questions, do you have any comments? And
yeah, I find this question really interesting, and I do think that it offers an opportunity for a kind of new way of looking at cultural heritage, perhaps in the development of technology. You know, with Vicky's really insight into the plummeted of the tourism, like physical tourism onto the sites, I think now people are looking into AR, VR, using a kind of alternative technology so that we can experience the cultural heritage in a different way. And of course, you know, it doesn't replace the physical visit. You know, as someone who cares about heritage sites, I would love to go visit, you know, places like Pompeii and, you know, Tiananmen in real life. But one author that kind of really popped into my mind, I'm sure that Fergus knows about, Donovan, is it right, Kima, if I'm pronouncing it correctly? He writes a lot about, you know, sustainability, especially in the economic sustainability aspect of cultural heritage. And I think that, you know, all the things that Vicky had mentioned, you know, the downside of gentrification, noise, you know, excessive visits. These are the things that now we can really kind of look at it again and see how we can, you know, continue with maintaining the kind of cultural heritage visits, the cultural heritage tourism, without really jeopardizing the sustainability of those sites, and really kind of looking at the economical sustainability of things. So I think, yeah, it's fantastic. And I think it's, with a thread, I think it comes great opportunity too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vicky, what do you think?
Yes, I'd like to supplement that in terms of their impact. I think it's also kind of opportunities using Macau as an example, and it takes their time for the tourism or even the local government to educate the local peoples. So like in front of the Rosam Singapore, they organize quite a lot of tours for the locals to educate their youngers in terms of their different knowledge about heritage. So I think it's a time that we can think for a while to slow down a little bit and trying to let the local peoples get pride to their own properties.
Mm-hmm, definitely, yeah. Yep, so, oh, yeah, cannot imagine, it's already 9 p.m. Hong Kong time, 8 a.m. over there with Fergus. Yeah, approaching the end of tonight's webinar, I would like to thank the guest speaker, but also would like to have your last words. If you do have any comments or thought that you haven't shared with us yet, please do so. Fergus.
Thanks again for the kind invitation to be here, and great to see Tris and Vicky's presentations as well. Really insightful, well done. You know, I think one of the important things is just moving forward is that, you know, too often a lot of these places were being overtaken by people from outside, visitors, which is great, and it's important for the economy. But I think one of the key things now moving forward is that this is a way for communities to reclaim a lot of these spaces. Sure. And, you know, whether it's these important big heritage sites or the way that they used to interact with these places. And I think, you know, if there's anything that, you know, comes from a takeaway from this, as Vicky was just saying, you know, it's important to keep knowing about your place and your heritage, and especially to extend that to the younger people in your community. And when you do start making investments and when you do start planning, you know, it should be community facing. The tourists or visitors should be able to fit into your community. You shouldn't have to turn around and completely try to adapt to all these visitors that are coming to your place, because you start losing some of those authentic and livability elements that people are there in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. So, Tris and Vicky, any last words?
You know, we all wanted this Venice Biennale to be in Venice, and you know, Venice is one of the heritage places. And obviously, thanks to Donald, who is also in the audience, I can see that. You know, thanks to him, that the exhibition now is in Nina Tower. So do you know, have a chance to visit the webinar and the electronic means of the, you know, what's supposed to be in Venice. So
yeah, and Vicky.
Yeah, so thanks for inviting me, and it's a good opportunity to have such kind of idea exchange among us. And I think that the last word and always is consider the heritage tourism are conflict relationship, but we are now moving from the industrial economy to the experience economies. So both tourism heritage are talking about experience. So it's something that is intangible based. So it's something that we can consider in the future.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you again. Thanks for all the participants joining tonight's seminar. 2 words to take away by myself would be sustainability and thinking about the long term. Long term, we just don't just focus on what is in front of you, but really think about your next generations to come. Okay, so and I hope that you are also looking forward to the future webinars to come, and stay tuned to any updates on the Venice Biennale activities. Okay, so have a great evening, have a great day. Fergus over there, thank you for all of your participation. So good night and bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.